Hey guys, welcome to FineWineToMe, the wine business podcast. My name is Chaba and I'm back here after a very short 6-month break. We are recording this a week after Canada Day. I thought that's a great opportunity to talk to somebody about Canadian wines, somebody whose family heritage is very deeply rooted in Canadian wines. So yeah, let's see who is my guest today right after the intro. Hello, Andrea Kaiser is here with me.
Hi, Chaba. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. Right. First thing first, I wanted to say how I usually start these podcast episodes is letting the guest introduce himself, herself. But in your case, I think what we can do right now is maybe switch this over a little bit, because I think let's start with your dad, because I
Sure.
think most people heard about him, heard about Inniskillin and ice wine. Well, tell me about the story a little bit.
Sure. I think there's a little bit of a reflection, but you can maybe see him over my shoulder. This is my
Yep.
favorite place to do my interviews because I'm always thinking about him through my wine project and thinking about not only his impact on my personal life, but also on the impact on the Canadian wine industry. And actually, as I'm traveling the world and promoting my own wines, realizing the impact that he has had on the reputation of Canadian wines around the world. So sometimes when you have something very close to your home where you live or in your family, you don't always appreciate. Like, I live right down the road from the falls, and I forget how magical and beautiful it is living here. And it really wasn't until after we lost my dad in 2017 that I really understood the impact and the legacy that he had created. And we'll talk after I know about my own wines, but that was really why I ended up going into specifically creating a wine brand of my own. So yeah, my dad was originally from Austria, and he was a teacher. Actually, before that, he was planning to be a priest, but he left because he was told he asked too many questions. So he ended up becoming a teacher and met my mother back in Austria. They were both Austrian, but she had been in Canada for a while and gone home to work in the village where she grew up. And
Not in the church, I hope.
no. This was much after. And so they fell in love, were married, had my sister back in Austria. And then my mother, of course, wanted to return back to Canada because her parents were here. And so my dad, mom, dad, my sister came back to Canada. I was born in Canada. And at that time, my father was going back to school because he didn't speak English. His education wasn't recognized, and he was just starting over. And so he attended a local university, Brock, to get his degree in chemistry. But his biggest stress and concern about Canada was not the fact that he had to go back to school and learn a new language. It was the fact that the bread and the wine were absolutely horrible here. And how dare my mother bring him here, because the European breads, the ryes, were not really prevalent. And also the wine was not very good at all. And so, much like my father being the academic that he was and always was through his life, he decided to understand why the wine was so bad in Canada. And so that led him on a personal journey of researching, calling around to different nurseries. In particular, he ended up calling Donald Rosado, who would be his future partner. And they ended up having a very long, deep discussion about the grapes that were being used in Ontario or Canadian wines at that time. And this would have been the early 70s. And so it sort of evolved the conversation around the fact that Donald was doing some experimentation in the nursery, growing grapes that were European heritage. At the time, it was French hybrids. Those hybrids were largely developed in the 1800s when Europe was facing the whole phylloxera challenge. And so they were very winter hardy, very, roots very hardy. And so they, the idea was that they would also be able to withstand Canadian winters, because while we have a great growing season for ripening from about May to October, we do, of course, have very cold winters, which we'll talk about, obviously give us the opportunity to make a special wine. But so that's how it all started. And that conversation led to the founding of Inniskillin Wines, which was the first winery license granted since Prohibition here in Canada.
This is like, wow, it's amazing.
Yeah, it was, again, right, like I said, like when you're part of it, you're in it, you don't really absorb the gravity of what they had done. So
it's actually modern Canadian winemaking starts there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You were there. Well, like your dad was there. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And it really was that change in the grapes that they were using and that launched modern Canadian winemaking. And as you know, wines, great wines always start in the vineyard. So using the indigenous Canadian grape varieties was just not, they're really more like a juice grape, Labruscas. So there just was no possibility of making fine wine with those particular grapes. And so Donald Zeraldo, who co-founded Inniskillin with my dad, said, "Hey, Karl, I'd love to taste this wine that you're making out of these French hybrids." And that was why he applied for the license, and there we went. And it was just the stars were aligned. It was just not planned. My father left. He was in the middle of doing his PhD, moved his family of now 3 young children down to Niagara on the Lake here, where I grew up, and started this evolution of this change of wine growing here in Ontario.
And to be fair, I mean, obviously he started making wine, I assume, when somebody starts their winery, their vineyard, their whole journey into wine, really, they try different things, but there's one thing really stick, which was ice wine, essentially. That's what I'd say, that's what brought him international fame in the wine world.
So the original sort of, there was specific things that were important to both Donald and my dad. Number one, that the wines be 100% Canadian and that they be known to be Canadian. Often ask the question, well, is your wine like a Chablis? Is it like a Bordeaux? Is it like a Champagne? It's like, no, my wine is like Canadian wine. And so there was
that's not a good marketing tactic, to be honest, back in the days, I think.
Yeah, but he was very true to himself, very authentic. He didn't want to be known as copying anyone, and that his wines were judged on their own quality and merit. And of course, it was an uphill battle because the reputation of Canadian wines, not only locally, but people around the world didn't even know we were making wines. Yeah. And until in 1991, I believe, that his 1989 ice wine won the Grand Prix d'Honneur, which was Best of Show and Van Expo. And so all of the sudden, not only did he change the face of Canadian winemaking by understanding that the grape source, the material, the fruit was significant in terms of how the wine would taste, but then he also put Canadian wine on the map by, out of sort of nowhere, coming and winning this. Really, at the time, Van Expo would have been the top international wine competition in the wine world, and to win the coveted title was kind of shocked everyone. So,
and in terms of the ice wine category, if there was a category at all, I mean, it's obvious that dessert wine as a category as such, but ice wine, it's really rare thing generally. So obviously in Germany they make ice wine, potentially in Austria as well, sometimes even in Hungary, where I came from originally. But it really is a very Canadian, if I can say. You could put the maple leaf on it and just have that, and then everyone would know that this is ice wine. Obviously the winter in Canada allows this to happen. Not many places have these sort of winters what you have, alongside very great growing seasons as well. What was outside of ice wine? What was your dad's sort of, I don't know, what did he look up for as a wine? Did he have any specific region what he wanted to, obviously not copy, but like take it as as some sort of a standard?
You know, he was so committed to his wines being authentic to Canada. Of course, he was not oblivious to looking around the world, but I think that the research was more about what would grow here climatically that was appropriate, as opposed to trying to copy certain
Yeah.
regions. And certainly in looking at the geography and the, you know, sort of the latitude of where we sit, I mean, it was clear we were not going to be producing wines, you know, hot climate varieties like in South Africa or Australia or California. So it was natural to look to cool climate viticulture varieties. So he was from Austria and, of course, knew German varieties. And that's sort of how the whole ice wine conversation started. So there was a lot of experimentation also going on at that time because growers really didn't know what would do well here. Not because, as you say, the growing season didn't exist, but how they would survive the winter. And so everyone was a little shy at first. The French hybrids were the first, you know, the trying Sauvignon Blanc, Marshall Fauge, Dechonac, varieties most people wouldn't necessarily know around the world so much, but they were safe. And then slowly growers just started to experiment with different varieties to see how they would overwinter, certainly having the ripening time. And so we definitely did look to cool climate regions. And so Riesling, and then also Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, looking at Burgundian wines in terms of the soils. And so he was a scientist. So a lot of that research was based on what he felt could grow here and grow well, would ripen well. So, you know, going towards more earlier ripening varieties as opposed to maybe some late Cabernet ripening. Mind you, Cab Franc has ended up evolving as a shining star for the region. So that is why you see a lot of predominant varieties in the region now, Riesling, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, that are cool climate, so to speak, and that do well and sort of really shine in this region.
Just came into my head while you were talking about grape varieties. Obviously, ice wine, Vidal or Vidal, whatever you want to pronounce it, is that's the base and everyone knows. Is that still a grape variety which is widely used in the region?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it, you know, was one of the French hybrids that were originally used for table wines, and it's still used to make a lot of light white, fresh whites. But my dad believed that it was a great grape to select for ice wine production when he started and made ice wine for the first time, because it has a very bright fruit characters, but also it has an extremely thick skin. So again, the scientist, what grape is going to survive well so that I can leave it on the vine and not deteriorate and be whole when I harvest it. And so that's why Vidal was selected. And so it certainly has emerged as sort of the shining star, the leader, because it does have these intense aromatics that we don't normally see. It performs very well in the vineyard. But there are other wineries who are exploring other varietals very traditionally, like a Riesling ice wine, which is a bit more, it has a thinner skin, a little more delicate. So it does, the crop tends to be a little smaller and it's a little more precarious. We also have some red ice wines, some Cabernet Franc, but definitely Vidal is kind of the workhorse and the shining star of ice wine still here in Ontario. And it is something that is not really produced elsewhere. I think they use Vidal in Uni Blanc, I think is the other name for it, in Cognac as the base. But for us, I think it makes our ice wines authentic to Canada. And then, of course, we have some wineries that are producing a wide variety of ice wines, but it would still be the core.
Do you know roughly percentage-wise, grape, you know, how much it grows?
To guess, I would say probably 80% of the ice wine in the market is Vidal, and probably 20% is a combination. Maybe 25, 75 would be of Riesling ice wine, Cabernet ice wine, Cabernet Franc specifically. And then Pilotary Estate Winery is one of the ones that has sort of the biggest portfolio of ice wines. I think they do about maybe 10 varietals. Yeah, so they do a lot of fun ones. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. That's brilliant. I think, well, certainly your dad created something incredibly unique, and in my mind, he didn't want, as you say, he didn't want to copy anything or anyone. He wanted to run his own race.
Yes.
In a way.
Yes.
And what made him so successful, so well recognized in the world of wine, I'd say. But we obviously here to talk about you a little bit as well and your wines and everything. And yeah, it would make sense to go straight into your wine company. However, as far as I know, you do a few other things in life as well. And it's probably a good chance for you to sort of introduce yourself unfiltered in a way that, what do you do outside of the vineyard? Because we're going to talk about the vineyard things and the winery.
Okay, that is a big question.
Yes. Anyone who looks up your LinkedIn profile can see a lot of things on there. And yeah.
Not exactly the expected mix of items, but yeah, it's really funny because I've always been very jealous of people that know exactly what they are supposed to do and what they're like, yeah, I was watching this documentary the other night about the shark whisperer. And I don't know if you've seen it. It just came out about this girl that swims with great white sharks. And
yeah, okay. Yeah.
And she's like talking about the fact that she's known this is what she's was born for. And I've always struggled with that because I love to learn. I love variety. I love meeting new people, having new experiences. And so I was kind of always jealous of my dad too, thinking, well, he always knew he was supposed to be a winemaker and that's what he was. But when I look back and I tell the story, he kind of didn't either. First he was
I mean, from a priest to a teacher to a winemaker. Yeah, no.
To, doing his PhD and then ending up somehow becoming the pioneer of modern Canadian winemaking. So I guess I really am following my father's footsteps. I've done a lot of very cool things. So I was asked in my early 20s by my family to manage a new business that my dad had purchased. So I accidentally, sort of unintentionally, became a restaurant manager for 10 years. And that I was going to go to law school and then ended up managing a hotel restaurant, which was an incredible experience because it was like a business from the ground up. Like it was actually a restaurant that was in receivership that I took over. My dad bought it. He had a couple too many beers one night with my brother-in-law at the time. He's like, oh, that is for sale. That's a really cool restaurant. We should buy that. So,
by the way, anyone who's listening, this is not the way how to start a business.
No.
Okay.
And most of the things in my life have kind of like come to me by accident, as opposed to me saying, I'm going to do this. But I have an open heart and always open to hear what. So I jumped in. I learned so much for 10 years. And then after 10 years, decided that I needed to kind of get a restaurant business is very intense, late hours. I had 2 children then. So I ended up deciding to return to sort of we sold the business so I could work more of a Monday to Friday type job. And I ended up settling at working at a neighboring winery, which confused the entire wine community because I worked at Rife Estate Winery in Niagara-on-the-Lake around the corner from Inniskillin, which my dad had founded. So everyone was very confused. Andrea, what are you doing there? But we had since sold Inniskillin. And it was then at that time a large corporate company. And I had only ever worked in small businesses, family businesses, first with my family and then running the restaurant. And so for me, working at Ripe Estate was a really great fit because it was, small business. We knew the family from growing up. And so I was there for 20 years. But in between that, I had lots of sort of people putting up their hand and saying, Andrea, you should try this. You should do this. And I was very fortunate that my boss, the owner of Rife Estate, allowed me to explore my other passions. And so I somehow ended up being encouraged to run for a local council position here in Niagara-on-the-Lake to be a municipal councillor. And so I was a politician for about 10 years in my 30s. I sat on the local municipal council and then stepped back from politics. My kids were becoming teenagers. I thought, I better focus on what's happening at home. But then lured back into politics, I should say, or encouraged to step back up when my kids about 10 years ago. And I was asked by a colleague of mine that had known me from sort of my previous political life to ask me if I might run for the what we would call our federal campaign to run under one of our parties here to be member of parliament in Ottawa. So I did that. I did not win, but I became very close. So.
Yes.
So yeah, somehow politics as continually finds me after I was not successful in becoming a federal MP, a member of parliament. I did run in a regional election, and I currently sit as a regional councillor. So I am winemaker politician extraordinaire.
Brilliant, brilliant. And as far as I know, there's a marketing agency in the mix as well somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. Let's not forget about that. So
Which
yes,
participating in, I'm guessing as well.
I do. So my brother, after I left Rife full time because I was launching my own wine brand and then also running in that election. So I went down to just part time at Rife Estate. I still consult for them, but then that kind of evolved to join my brother, who is a label designer, and Mark has a marketing design agency. And so I do consulting for various wineries for regulatory work and applying for business, applications for winemaking, etc. So yes, there's a nice, my days are always different.
Busy, yes, busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say.
And no one the same. So
Yes.
sorry.
And yeah, I mean, and you have to walk your dog as well occasionally. Plus,
Yes,
yeah.
I've never a dull moment. And I was laughing. I saw my neighbor, so I'm turning off my phone here. I saw my neighbor across the street. I was walking my new puppy, and he has this tiny little miniature dog who's like, has a 2-second walk. And here I am standing with my brand new Great Dane puppy.
Oh God, okay.
And I was like, well, if you're gonna go for it, go big or go home. And like, I can't keep anything uncomplicated in my life. So yes, I have a new Great Dane in my life, but she's a sweetheart.
That's great. I think you have to build some stables or something, because
Yes, I think so.
once she grows up, I think you can't really keep her in the house.
Yes,
Yeah.
always an adventure in Andrea Kaiser's life.
Cool. I suppose we have to go back to politics a little bit later as well. We intentionally keeping that at the end.
Okay.
So yeah, just for safety reasons here. Let's talk a little bit about your. Can I say it's your main job, winemaking, or is it
about halfway there? So it did start. So my wine company, my wine brand started as a passion project, and really was after my dad passed away, which was a sad moment. But our family was very specific in deciding that, we waited about 4 months to celebrate his life so that we could actually celebrate his life. And we had an amazing celebration, about 500 people in attendance from all across the community. And it was really cool to see the whole sort of breadth and depth of people in his life that he had touched as an educator, as a mentor, as a winemaker. Not only, just, it was incredible. And I truly remember standing there and thinking, like, it cannot end here. Like, none of my siblings, so to speak, we're all in the wine business, but none of us had become winemakers, quote unquote, to follow in his footsteps. And I as my siblings also thought at that time, we can't let this end. It's too important. It's too special. And so for me, my expression of carrying on his legacy was to launch my own wine in his memory. And it did just start as a single wine, a Sauvignon Blanc, that I approached the owner of Rife Estate Winery, who I had, his uncle knew my dad, had originally grown for him. So long relationship, business and personal. And I talked to Klaus at Rife about making my own wine, and he was very supportive. He loved my dad, and he's like, yeah, you should carry this on. And you're more than welcome to do it here. And so my wine brand lives at Rife Estate Winery. That's where I do all of my wines are single vineyard, and then they're brought into their winemaking facility. I make it and I do sell it there, as well as other outlets, restaurants, a little bit of export, etc. But it did just start as the one wine, Sauvignon Blanc, but I, now have 6 wines, and it's just, I haven't been able to resist the urge to make more wines and to really carry on a lot of his passion about the varietals that he loved, the varietals that I love, the stories. I relish in the ability when I attend events and to be able to continue to share his story. And for me, that's the most incredible experience, and so meaningful to my brother, my sister, and I, as to make sure that people know what he did and the significant impact that he had. And at the same time, I get to now discover my own passion for making wine. And as I said, I've never truly known what I'm supposed to be doing, but I definitely, whether that's not just making wine, I definitely feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It's been very rewarding personally in terms of telling my dad's story, but also to express my sort of creative side in terms of the wine styles, the packaging. I'm first sort of was a wine marketer, and then now to actually connect the dots with that, with the product inside the bottle, is just incredible. So
when you started the winery, obviously it's sort of, as you explained, it's to carry on your dad's legacy, but on the labels or in the branding itself, it doesn't look like you want to sort of live on his name. It's more about
yes,
it's more about you,
yes,
or at least it's like you don't advertise this to the world that, okay, this is my wine, I'm the daughter of, you
yes.
know you know what I mean. And I think that's
So true. And it's interesting because my dad was the most humble person you could meet. I mean, he did not talk about his quote unquote fame. We grew up in that environment where it was just, we didn't, as a family, kind of speak in those contexts. And so I sort of inherited that. And also, it was really important to me that I did not want people to, it's kind of similar to him saying, I don't want you to drink my wine because it's, you want to support Canadian just to be nice, or because I've told you it tastes like Shabby. I want you to drink it because it's good. And I share that philosophy. I want you to drink my wine because it's delicious. And therefore, while it's lovely for me to be able to extend that story out as people dig into my wine, I want them to drink my wine because it's good wine. And it has been an exploration for me as well. Obviously, I've been inspired by certain stories or certain varieties that my dad has talked about, or I've had with him over the years. But I've kind of been defining myself as a winemaker unto myself over the last, since launching the brand 5 years ago. And so yeah, it's been really an interesting journey to understand what my expression of my wines are and my wine personality or my wine brand. But it is really important to me that people drink the wine for its on its
what it
own.
is. Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Do you, if you go somewhere, let's say outside of Canada or outside of your region, let's
Yeah.
say, and you just go there and then put your wines out and a tasting or whatever, do they immediately know that your heritage, or is it just comes afterwards as like
It largely comes afterwards. Yeah, I mean, certainly, like the packaging obviously is always the first thing people notice, and I've been very
yeah.
fortunate. My brother is a
That's
labeled,
what I noticed as well. Yeah.
yeah, and like love it or like it, but it's very striking. And my favorite story is that I went to the UK for the first time, which is where we met at the
Yeah.
Taste Canada event. The very first year I went 5 years ago, and I was at my table and I had all my labels lined up, which are very, very
Yeah.
striking, dramatic.
Artistic, I would
Yes,
say. Yes.
artistic. And Jancis Robinson stopped to look at my table.
Mhm.
And so, number one, that's a win, just getting someone's attention. And so she came over. I was so nervous I couldn't even speak. I was just like, because she's like, here's Jancis
Yeah.
Robinson, right? And I was like a new winemaker, so I didn't have a ton of confidence in my wines because I just started like to produce, and so she ended up tasting my wines, not knowing anything about my heritage of my dad. And it was really the
Yeah.
labels that first drew her to the table. And I told my brother, and of course, thanked him for that. And one of the most incredible comments was that she said that, which she would not know this, of how meaningful her review was to me, because I saw the review about 4 months later, that the wines were their own master and like no other, and not a copy of anything else. And I literally just tears came to, and they still do. I mean, that was my dad's goal his entire life, was to not, and to, for her to say that about my wine, not knowing anything about the connection, it was a moment I will never forget. And it was so special for me too, because it then made me confident to know that I was making good wines on my own. And so yeah, it usually is like kind of the second layer. So
Did she walk away from the table without knowing still that you're...
it's possible.
You didn't talk about
No,
the connection or anything, no?
no. I mean, she was tasting many wines in the room, and she had her notes, and I had no clue, whether she was going to write a positive or even a review at all. And I was kind of like just monitoring the website to see is anything coming up about the Canada tasting, like fingers crossed, right? Because I knew she had tasted my wine. Yeah. And so it's funny. I don't know that she knows that how meaningful that review was to me, and that pivotal moment of just being a new wine producer, and also feeling like this pressure that, my dad was one of the best winemakers in the world, and I've got a lot to live up to, so to speak. So that was definitely changed my perception of myself, and that hey, you know what, my wines are really good, actually.
I actually wanted to talk about your labels as well a little bit, because anyone who knows me, they know that I'm a sucker for a good label, honestly. It's just like, I love a good, because I understand the difficulty of selling wine, especially in the UK, for example, but I assume everywhere else in the world. When you walk into a wine shop, for example, and you have 1,000 wines, you're looking at them. It's like, what will make the difference is very important, because, as I always say, packaging is part of the product.
Yes.
And if I can bring you the best wine with a crap label, you will never taste it. I can bring you a terrible wine with a very good label, you will taste it.
Yeah.
Obviously, the ideal scenario is if I bring you a good wine with a good label, and then you will taste it, and then you come back more.
No, it's a very interesting discussion. As my brother is a wine label designer, so that's the core of his business, is label packaging for, well, started out as wine, but now also like beers, some food packaging, etc. And you're right, like you have to capture someone's attention. In our case, we have a monopoly, much like in Norway, where you are on a shelf with many brands and you have to capture that attention. And in the example of being at that tasting, it does and see, I'm the worst salesperson. I don't even have a bottle of my wine to show you. Hang on. There we go. I'm back. So yes, the drama of that visual of people, looking at it, and to just stop and pick up the bottle is the first step. And so my brother and I talk about that often. And it's interesting. I just talked to him again about my label, because I do have one sort of downside of my label, which I didn't realize originally. So my vision for my label was that the fruit that I depict on each bottle is, for those in the wine business, I think we get it more, and I didn't really realize that it would maybe not translate with every consumer, that it's supposed to be like significant, interpretive of the fruit character. So gooseberries on a Sauvignon Blanc, my rosé has raspberries. But an unintended consequence is that sometimes when I go to shows, people think it's fruit wine. And
that's what I don't know if you remember, but when I walked to your table, I said, I love the labels. I love I think it was the sparkling rosé with a rose on it, or
yes, it is a rose. But,
But I said to you that I think it was a Dornfelder, or was it a Cabernet Franc? I can't remember. But I said, okay, here I'm a little bit worried. I love the label, but I'm a little bit worried what it's going to be. And I understand the concept as a wine professional, that we want to show what's in the bottle in some ways, but at the same time, if you think with the 99.9% of people who don't know anything about wine, they think, okay, what is it? Is it a fruit juice, or is it a fruit wine? Yeah.
Yeah, so it was an unintended consequence, so to speak, of because I'm thinking as a wine person, right?
Yeah.
When I developed the label. And so I just finished having this conversation with my brother and the LCBO, which is the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, where my wines just got released, and discussing this exact point. Like, are people, it's fine when I sell it at the winery and my team that Rife is explaining, this is a Sauvignon Blanc, it's very easy, or I'm at a show, but when it's sitting on the shelf, is that doing me a disservice? And yeah, but at the same time, I've had 2 or 3 different people that have come to me recently and said, you cannot change this label. It's incredible. Like, it's so beautiful. So I'm really struggling with like what the right decision is, right?
I know.
And because of that, and I remember I did a tasting in New York City, and I had this one couple that came up to my table at the very end, and I could hear her husband say, no, we're not going to taste that wine. It's fruit wine. And this was at like this high posh event in New York City. And then the wife kind of gave me a little opening. And I said, oh, actually, it's not fruit wine. I think you'll be surprised. And they're like, well, no, it's probably really sweet. And they were like, kind of like, very,
Yeah.
and I said, no, I said, all my wines are bone dry. And that's the other thing, right? A lot of people think it's sweeter. And they tasted it and they were like, oh my God, these are the best wines in the room. I cannot believe that we were just going to walk right past you and not give you, because they don't have that very elegant traditional look, that, sort of expensive look.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what the right answer is, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because, as you say, you want the label doesn't just have to look pretty, doesn't just have to strike, bring attention, but it
Yeah.
also have to tell without words what's in the bottle.
Yeah.
And I think in your case, maybe the sparkling rosé works really well because the rose on the
Yeah.
label and the color of the rose and
Yeah.
everything sort of immediately tells me what it will taste like. And then when I taste it, it's yes, that's it. That's
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but with the fruit is different. So I think it's a very, very tricky
Yeah. And I had someone tell me
scenario.
today that they think my wine, the experience of drinking my wine is better because when they're drinking it and they look at the label and they think that they find that note of gooseberries or raspberries, they actually feel it enhances their experience. And then what's also interesting is that as I've been going this kind of self-discovery as a winemaker, I'm realizing that one of the tenets that's really important to me in my wine style is that the fruit speaks first. And that was something my dad and I, we all talked about. He talked about a lot, was that he'd always say, Drea, this wine is like 5 years old, but it still has beautiful fruit, fresh, beautiful fruit. And so I associated that with the high quality wine or even my personal taste of having wines with very natural, fresh fruit character. And so then in some ways, this label does project that style of my wine. So I go in circles, people telling me, do not change your label. And then to your point about the rosé, I've gotten a lot of great feedback about that particular label with the rose, also from one of my main buyers. So it's a tough decision. I'm not
It
sure
is.
where we'll land.
I think this is something what you have to sleep on a few times.
Absolutely.
To start with.
I even think about that, the reason Jancis Robinson stopped at my table was because my labels were so striking and different. So,
I know. Yeah, tricky. It's a tricky question.
Yes.
But what's more important, I think, well, or at least equally as important, is what's in the bottle.
Yeah.
And in your case, you're obviously making Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
You have sparkling wine. You have Cabernet Franc.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have Dornfelder. I asked you in London as well, what is this about? I have a sorry, I shouldn't say this, but
Other question. No, that's great.
I have an American friend also in the wine business, and I often tease her okay, I know she hates Dornfelder, just generally
Right.
the grape itself. And I often tease her like, okay, I'm going to buy you a bottle of Dornfelder.
Make you think this.
And I'm not suggesting that your Dornfelder is not great.
No.
But where is that come from? Obviously, the Germanic side of you, it
Yeah.
must be coming from somewhere back here too.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, back here, him. So definitely was from him. So yeah, it's at the time, as I said, in the early days, we were doing a lot of experimentation in what grapes grew well here. And so when we evolved from the hybrids, my dad started to do experimentation with different vinifera grapes. And Dornfelder is a vinifera, even though it's a hybrid cross, it is a vinifera. And he just felt that it had potential for having a very good place here in Canada because he knew it from Germany and Austria. Very good cool climate red, one of the few that gets that deep dark purple color that you don't see in cool climate viticulture. So he felt like it was worth planting some, which he did. And he made a Dornfelder. Sometimes he didn't always tell his partner Donald what he was making, right? He's a creative winemaker. And so Donald's words to him when he brought the Dornfelder and told him about it and had it, and Donald's like, Karl, like this is also early days. How can you, I can't sell this. Like it's Dornfelder. Like, nobody knows it. It's got an ugly name. Like, it's like, I can't sell this. And so he only made it 1 year. And then afterwards started using it for blending, as many wineries, not many, but a number of wineries still do. There's about 5 growers of Dornfelder. But I remember that wine. I love fruit forward wines, and I always loved the color. It's like this purple, intense. So I was always attracted to it, and I was kind of sad to see it go. He made an ice wine as well from Dornfelder 1 year, and there's still a few bottles sort of around, and it is like ink. It is incredible. The deep purple, it's like black almost, the wine, and it's the fruit flavor. And so this is the thing, right? Like my dad was so obsessed with the fruit in the wine, and I am obsessed with the fruit in my wine, the fruit speaking first. And so when I was thinking about making my rosé, I was thinking about, what varieties are out there. And I have to be honest, I'm not a big Cab Franc rosé fan because I don't always like the green kind of vegetal characters that come out on that. Pinot Noir, of course, beautiful, but I don't know. I honestly just had this kind of vision, dream, thinking about Dornfelder, how fruity it is, and how beautiful that would be in a rosé. And then I thought, this is perfect. If I make a rosé, I don't have to tell anybody it's Dornfelder, and I can get the world to love Dornfelder
without them knowing that it's actually what it is. Yeah. Okay.
So then it became like this personal mission that, and I do tend to go against the grain a little bit. I don't know, just that's kind of my personality. So, and it's a passion project, so I can have a little fun with it. And honestly, the rosé, I ended up calling it a Rosado because it's quite dark, of course, just to help consumers figure that out. But it's delicious. As I hoped, as I dreamed, that this beautiful fruit comes forward, and it's got this nice little creaminess, it's elegant. And then what happened was, I was talking with the winemaker who helps me at Rife. He said, Andrea, we've done free run juice for your rosé, the Rosado, cold ferment, of course, no skins and seeds. I've got this must left over that is, what happens is you get a higher concentration of skins and seed because we've taken the runoff juice. He goes, if you like, I can just, press it out or ferment it and use it and blend it with some of my other wines. And I said, no, I go, you know what? That seems like, let's just go for it. So then we took that remaining must, which had that extra concentration of skins and seeds, and then fermented that hot into a red wine. And what I loved about what we did in the end was, I did not put it in oak because I wanted this to be sort of my lighter, fresher summer red. But what I didn't anticipate, which was actually quite genius, was that the skins and the seeds gives it the extra texture without the oak masking the fruit. And so it ends up being a nice complexity on the palate that's unexpected from that extra skin and seed.
Yeah, and I think when I tasted it, I called it crunchy,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
like
got that little bit of
chill this down, and then yeah, like
yeah,
let's have fun with it.
yeah.
From a sales point of view, it's still terrible calling it Dornfelder, but it's okay.
I'm on a mission. And I just received word from, like, I guess about a month ago, I had entered my wines in the International Wine Challenge every year, and all 5 of my wines received commendations, including the Dornfelder.
There we go.
Tina from Decanter tasted it 2 years ago, and she made me laugh because, much like you, she walked up to my table and she said, "Well, I guess I'll taste this if since I'm here, but Dornfelder, like kind of the same thing." And then she tasted it and she's like, "Oh, this is actually quite lovely. You could teach some people how to make Dornfelder."
Yes, I suppose it's even within the wine industry.
Yes.
There are some people who don't know about Dornfelder. I mean, let's be honest, we don't always drink Dornfelder on every Saturday afternoon.
Yes.
But whoever knows probably sort of associated with like mediocre German
Exactly.
table wine. And then
Yes.
whenever something good comes out, it's always a surprise.
Right.
So in a sort of a reverse psychology way, it's actually quite a good sales thing. So
Yes.
like if
Yes.
okay, put it there, they will say, "Oh, I don't want this," and then when they taste it, it's like, "Ah, actually, it's freaking good." Like, why
Yeah,
not?
and normally I don't bring Dornfelder to, excuse me, like international shows because I know it's not well known. However, in the UK, because of what's happening there with the wines, I had heard that Dornfelder was kind of emerging as a potential variety because of their climatic conditions. So I thought, oh, you know what? At least people will know what it is. And so
Yes. Okay, I'm not talking about your wine now, but
Okay.
about Dornfelder in general. We still don't like it. So that's just
well,
kidding.
I do, so it's all good.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
No,
So anyway,
no worries. It's like it is funny. It's become this kind of little mission, and the most fun I was having with it was the fact that I would hide it in my rosé, and nobody would know. So,
no, actually, the wine is pretty good.
yeah.
So yeah, we talked quite a bit about your wines, but I still have one which I just tasted without a label, and I thought like, oh, finally somebody got it. It was your ice wine, but it's not an ice wine. It's a sparkling ice wine.
Yes.
And I think if you remember, I said to you, oh, that's actually brilliant because it makes it so easy to drink.
Yeah.
It's not. It sort of stands out.
Yes.
At the same time as like, okay, well, brilliant. It has bubbles. It's fresh. But it has the sweetness.
Yeah, it really lifts it. And so, I'm not a sweet wine person. As I've shared with you, all of my collection is 3 grams per liter or less. I'm kind of obsessive about that. My wines are all bone dry, but of course with ice wine, there, has to be the exception. But I am not, I have to say that for me, enjoying ice wine, it is related to the bubbles, the sparkling. It just, to me, like you said, just takes me to a different level with that wine. And I am in love with what that does together is the sparkling component with the dessert wine kind of, and it goes back to that balance and kind of lifts kind of lifts it all up. I mean, the sign of a great ice wine is always that if it's not cloying and doesn't finish super sweet. But for me, like you said, the bubbles just take it to that other level. And so my dad was actually pioneered that product as well. In the millennium, he was kind of tasked with, let's do something special for a release. And so I'm not even sure how he kind of concocted it in his head, but decided to take an ice wine and send it through a Charmat method and do a secondary fermentation. And the results, they released the first sparkling ice wine in 2000 at Inniskillin, was the first of its kind. And was always and has always been my favorite.
Yeah. I mean, it's just brilliant, and it just like at that tasting as well. Tasting the ice wines, I know them. I actually like sweet wine personally, but after the third one, the fourth one, okay, whatever. I don't try to look down on these things, but
the only thing I earmark that when you taste a Dornfelder ice wine, because that is definitely happening.
Oh,
wine,
wow. Okay.
then you are going to be blown away by that as well. So look
Okay.
forward to that maybe in a year or two.
Yeah, very open, very open. You can change my mind about Dornfelder. That's good. So yeah, but because we talked about ice wine,
Mhm,
and the whole episode is called Canada Beyond Ice Wine.
mhm,
Is let's go beyond ice wine because in general,
mhm.
and we're not talking about just your wines, but
Yeah.
Canadian wine in
Mhm.
general. I assume the whole country or every wine grower wants to be seen as not just an ice wine country.
Absolutely.
They want to be associated with good quality
Yeah.
still wines, sparkling wines, everything what you can produce in that country.
Yeah,
So where is that process right now, do you think?
sure. Yeah, and I think, there was a very specific concerted effort after we, in the early 90s won the award. That was incredible because it did put us on the map in terms of people knowing about us. But we realized kind of later that also then put it as us at a disadvantage, is that people assumed all we made was ice wine. So there definitely has been a concerted effort over the last, for sure, 10 maybe 15 years to distance ourselves a little bit from ice wine in being what automatically comes to people's heads. And one of the things that we've been cultivating, which is, again, you always have to be true to yourself, is that we are one of the, sort of the cool climate viticulture that exists here because of the geography, as in any particular region that produces, quote unquote world class wines. We have very, very special wine region that exists because of, the combination of what, in our case, Niagara and the Lake. We have Niagara River, Lake Ontario, and the escarpment, which is behind me. And then we have this little microclimate, and we have these geographic, like the soils that are beneath us are from what used to be Lake Iroquois. So the lake had been up at the escarpment and then receded back to where it is now, or to Lake Ontario. And so here we have this beautiful soils and these extended growing degree days, which allow us to grow these Vitis vinifera grapes like Chardonnay, Riesling, Pinot Noir, and that just, these wines that are so incredible. And then as you head up towards Toronto and go around the lake, there's kind of these little benches that are along the escarpment where grapes grow, and again they get some moderating effects from Lake Ontario. And so this specialty crop area is special. Like, I just saw a little clip of one of our top producers of Chardonnay, Thomas Bachelder, who had worked a little bit with my dad in terms of, he was with Clos Jordan, which was a project associated with Inniskillin, and so really understanding that these wines, the Chardonnays, the Pinots, the Gamay, and also Cabernet Franc, specifically Niagara and the Lake, and even Sauvignon Blanc, Riesling, they are very well suited, and we make very special wines. And even with climate change, I think what we do here is becoming even more special in the sense that, you know, I think, generally philosophically speaking, it's really easy to have a hot climate and make really bold reds or heavy wines, and they're soft and they're supple and they're easy for your palate. But I think that people are evolving, and I think wine consumers evolve too over time, on a journey, perhaps, not to pigeonhole everybody, but certainly that structure and acidity in a wine allows it to be a food friendly wine. And really, I think the fine wines of the world, generally, in my opinion, are rooted in this cool climate viticulture that we have in spades. Tiny, but super special, like obviously compared to the other regions in the world. And then of course we have this added bonus of this winter that allows us to produce this other product, the ice wine, that no one else can do significantly on a scale that we do because of, and again, even climate change. Germany and Austria are struggling, but yes, we've been working very hard over the last 15 years to cultivate that story about our cool climate viticulture, that where we have these these special conditions that, so yes, we definitely, and we're making strides for sure, but it I mean, I think as well, just even in visually, you know, Canada North, ice wine, it kind of all like people have this vision of Canada and Eskimos and igloos and whatever they, you know, that ice wine fit that narrative, right? So the Great North.
I was gonna say exactly the same thing. Like, whenever you say Canada, people imagine, you know, people on skis and sledges
Yeah,
and ice skates and whatever. But you actually have, like, you know,
yeah,
very warm summers as well. And
absolutely, especially where I live in Niagara on the Lake. Like if you look at the latitude and people see where we line up to, that it's just that they can't. I was just in Norway and we were chatting about that, just that thing, right? Because they are so far north, and I think that we looked it up. They're like up with Yellowknife, which is for me like, you know, hours and hours and hours of driving. So we're right near, you know, we've got Buffalo right across, but again, people think of Buffalo as, but we're like an hour from New York City by a flight. And yeah, our summers are absolutely beautiful and warm, and we grow tender fruit. I just picked up cherries yesterday and strawberries, and it is a very specific, and it's not all of Canada, it's not all of Ontario, you know, other, we are pushing out and pushing the boundaries a little bit past just Niagara, but we have some newer regions like Prince Edward County, Nova Scotia, Quebec, but you will see that those regions will not focus as much or at all perhaps on vinifera varieties like the Chardonnay, like the Pinot, like the Riesling, and that they are going to and have been exploring hybrids, which I believe even in Europe they're exploring a little bit more because of climate change as well. So it's funny to see, you know, the sort of it's always like the mini skirt, it comes back.
yes, exactly. I mean, and to be fair, on that tasting as well, I tasted kind of Malbec from Canada. It's just like,
Mhm,
what are we
mhm,
talking about, Malbec
mhm,
from Canada?
mhm. Yeah.
And yeah, it does exist, and it tastes good. And I suppose as things, you know, go forward, you will have the opportunity to try different things, and you know, probably work around many other grape varieties what you can
Yeah,
live
and
in the
there
future.
are conversations around scoping things in a little bit so that it is easier to communicate with the rest of the world that,
Mm,
you know what, these are the core varieties we do, this is what we do well. But it's hard because you know, there's still a lot of experimentation going on, and that it's natural for people to want to explore things different and new and exciting.
yeah,
As winemaker, I do that as well with my Dornfelder, like, so I understand that. And I sometimes people don't want to fit in a box, but I do understand there's also value. Like, we obviously, when you think of New Zealand, you think of Sauvignon Blanc, and now they've cultivated Pinot Noir or Oregon Pinot Noir. So there has been a lot of effort towards, in Ontario specifically, to cultivate some messaging around core varietals, which would be Riesling, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Cabernet Franc, and Gamay Noir. But not everyone agrees, right?
yeah,
Because, you know, in my case, I grow Sauvignon Blanc with my grower here in Niagara on the Lake because this farm is right near the Niagara River, and it has very specific climatic conditions that allow this Sauvignon Blanc to be well and
yeah,
exceptional. And if you drive out, you know, an hour, half an hour, 20 minutes, not so
yeah,
much. And
bit
that just,
different.
I mean, that's always the debate, right?
I mean, that is obviously, you know, messaging, general messaging,
Yeah.
simplifying messaging. There's something about that, because the consumer will understand, okay, from this region you get something similar, but it's very difficult to for everyone to agree on something,
Yeah.
and go with it as well.
Unless it's like highly regulated, obviously, like the
Yeah,
AOC, where, you know, if you, and we have an appellation system, but those are always the discussions going on. And because we're a new industry, we are, you know, evolving. And so for me, what you know, when we talked earlier about like sort of what's the beyond ice wine, for me, the story about the cool climate viticulture is the story that captures everyone regardless of variety, and the
yeah,
style of wines that we're able to produce that have the structure and complexity is what's exciting for me, because that allows winemakers to also be their own personal self, and to, in my case, my grapes all come from Niagara on the Lake specifically. And as soon as you leave Niagara on the Lake and start to drive towards Toronto, you won't see Sauvignon Blanc, you won't see Cabernet Franc, because their winters are harsher and their growing season is a tad shorter. So to me, the story is the cool climate viticulture.
Yes, which is fair point. And with that said, I think we arrived to the sales point of things, where you created the wine, and like you sort of realized that Dornfelder is going to be the next Northern Star of Canadian winemaking.
Mark my words. We'll take 5 years. It's all up here.
Yeah, exactly. But with that said, I think you have to be able to sell Canadian wine in general, other than just ice wine. Because let's be realistic, just selling ice wine is not going to pay the bills for any winery. I think maybe Inniskillin, but not none of the others. But and then here we are in this crazy time of, well, I don't know, history, and things are changing rapidly, and there is something which I think nobody anticipated, at least not at this in this sort of level. And I'm talking about the administration, south from Canada, starting a sort of tariff war with the world. But how I want to see this as a, and I think a lot of people do see this way. It's a golden opportunity, really, for a lot of companies, a lot of not just wineries, but all over generally. I think for Canada as well is something what you have to build on immediately, because competition is.
For sure. I tend to be an optimist, so by nature I tend to look at things in a positive way if I can. Obviously, it's been very stressful for Canadians and a lot of Canadian businesses that, from a manufacturing side and costing. So that being said, much like COVID, the pandemic, there was some positive things that I saw from being a small business owner / working at a small business, that, we all came together during that pandemic, and, we all focused on small businesses here in our community, as I'm sure the rest of the world did. And we started to talk about buying local and how important that was. And I used to teach at, I was a teacher too. So definitely, the mix of, I taught at the college in between the politics, the wine, whatever. I'm an instructor. And I used to talk to my students about the global economy and how we had changed. Like I would always tell the story of my daughter. I drove around for 2 days trying to find a prom dress for her. And I was like exhausted and frustrated because of course every dress looked amazing on her. And so then she's like, "Oh, that's okay, Mom. I'm just going to order it online. I found one I really like in Australia." Okay. So that was like pre-pandemic, right? And so we just all at our fingertips ordering everything, and then we sort of stopped. And in a lot of ways that this trade war has also, as Canadians and many around the world, stopped and looked inward. Definitely for the wine business specifically, there have been some accidental boosts in Canadian wine. In Ontario specifically, the US wines were pulled from the shelves. So we did have a special call out that came from our monopoly that said, "Hey, we have these shelves to fill." It's not going to be a permanent, I don't expect, but it's a short-term boost to the industry to get on, and even just some maybe even build brand equity with consumers over time, that they're trying wines they normally hadn't tried, especially in the category of reds, because in consumers' minds, that was where Ontario had always fallen short, perhaps without having an appreciation for what we just talked about, which was the cool climate wines styles versus the hot climate reds. And then from a political perspective, in looking at across Canada, like the interprovincial barriers have always been a kind of bone of contention that we as a wine industry have had, in having to look at each province as almost like an export across Canada. So those things have been very positive for our industry and starting to talk. I got a call from, there's a big Halifax International Wine Festival. They were planning to do a European, I can't remember which country this year, but they said, listen, we are going to do Canadian now. We've changed gears because we want to focus on, so internally supporting each other, much like through the pandemic, support our local economy. And so that, of course, helps. But even in my recent travels abroad, I was in Norway, there's even some more, like even just attention, even though it's kind of been negative attention in the sense that, the threat to our sovereignty, but it got people talking about Canada. And we've always kind of been like this quiet country that people forget about, and that's okay. We've definitely been in the news on the center stage a lot more. And I think that's just whether it's positive or negative, people knowing
Attention.
about your attention about the country has been good, and allow us to have those conversations about our wines beyond ice wine. But also it's really interesting, sorry, not to jump back, but when how everything goes like in a pendulum, like you try and fix something and then you go way over here. I've recently had discussions with our export trade commissioner about the fact that, yes, here was ice wine, the fame, and we all got nervous because it's all people thought about. So now we've been pushing to the table wines, but I feel we need to come back together. Ice wine is actually, so we are now like the only producer of ice wine really in the world.
Yes.
And for export and even domestically, we sell a ton of our ice wine at Rife through the LCBO. We export a lot of ice wine abroad, including the US. And so it is something that we need to not, distance ourselves too much, because much like Tokai, Sauterne, there is a place in the wine world to be respected and also to be consumers enjoy those products, maybe not every day. So I think that we need to kind of find that balance where we are known globally for not only our table wines, but also continue, because they can be really important for a business plan for a winery to be selling ice wine, and export really helps. Like, there are a lot of export markets that are interested in ice wine. So
I think you're right. So as you mentioned, that it's not gonna be a forever attention on Canada, but there's definitely an attention on Canada right now. And I think Canada has a very, I truly think that this is a great opportunity, what you can grab hold of and say, okay, well, hello, we are here.
yeah,
We produce ice wine, we produce Dornfelder, we
yes,
produce, sorry, I
yeah.
should stop Dornfelder now. But
No, that's okay. I love it because you're already talking about Dornfelder. That's the
exactly, yeah, this is how it, yeah.
That's how it starts. Yeah, I mean, as a Canadian, I've kind of suffered the same thing as many Canadians, where, we were just kind of, we didn't, I don't know, shout from the hilltops about being Canadian, feeling proud. When I was in Norway, I happened to be there for, I think it was the 17th of May for the National Day of Celebration. The pride and the parades and the national holiday, I was just blown away by people's love of Norway who live in Norway. And so as a Canadian, I was like, this is the way it should be. And now we are becoming that, where we are proud of being Canadian, and we're taking, joy in the amazing country we have. And so that helps us to not, once this moment is over, I think that it's almost like that time that Jancis Robinson told me my wine was lovely and distinguished. And it's like, oh, yeah, it
Yes.
is. So,
Yeah, people stand tall and proud, and
like,
yes.
oh, wait a minute, we're cool. We're really like, so yeah, so that's never a bad thing, I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. There's one thing you have to actually sort of work towards, I don't know, maybe with your political connections and everything, is Mark Carney, stop talking about ice hockey. Talk about Dornfelder now. And then
Yeah,
that's
that's
how
right.
this is how you're gonna go. from now
Yeah,
on. But
yeah. So Canada is not just hockey and ice wine; it's also about Dornfelder.
yeah, exactly.
So you heard it here first. One of the most inspiring winemakers that I have, of course, my father, who was always true, and that's where I draw following my heart, my passion is because that's what he did. And I gather strength from that to like to believe in myself and that it's okay if it's not popular with everybody. Trust me, him making wine in Canada was not a popular thing at that time. Everyone thought he was crazy and it was going to end up like, he'd be bankrupt within 2 years. So, but there's a winemaker, I'm not going to say it right. I think it's called Massian or Massican, his wines in California, and his name is Dan. And I somehow connected with him on LinkedIn and saw some of his posts, and he reached out because he was like, "Oh my God, I used to live in New York City, and I was always curious about ice wine because it was right there, and I'd love to come one day." So him and I started chatting, and I was down on a course in California at UC Davis, and we connected, and we just keep in touch. In the end, I started to read about his wines, and he was a writer for, I think, a Sports Illustrator, some very famous writer in New York City. And he decided, so again, you got writing, winemaking. He wanted to be a winemaker, went to Italy for a year, came back, moved to California, and started over. His new life was a winemaker. And his collection of wines in California, he makes no reds.
Okay. Yeah.
And he makes no Chardonnay. He makes all light, fresh, bright wines.
Yeah.
He's like, California, it's like 30 degrees here. Why would we want to be sitting around by the pool drinking this heavy, warm red wine? Like, what the, we should be embracing. And so he went against the grain. He is a leader, and now his wines are famous. I think they were Constellation maybe brought the brand, and he went totally against the grain to make the wines that he believed in, which were fruit, fresh, lighter styled Italian varieties that he tried growing there, totally against the whole philosophy of what was happening in California. And he's, put his wines are excellent, put them on the map. And so when I think about, my, following my heart, I think about to the Dornfelder. I think about, I think about
That's
him.
great.
Yeah.
I think after this podcast, if somebody is watching this, they and then they, your name can come up, they will just say like, okay, this is Dornfelder lady here.
Yeah. So, yeah, that being said, truly, all kidding aside, I mean, I do love Dornfelder, and I will always make it. My two signature sort of core varietals are Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Franc, because I understand that, at least for now, Dornfelder might not, hold a position in everyone's heart. But the core varietals I do really love, and that I've been super focused on, is the Sauvignon Blanc and the Cab Franc, and that is because they also grow very well here in Niagara Lake, where I grew up, and they're two of my favorite grape varieties. And then I couldn't help myself but to get into sparkling, because I just love like fresh, bright, fruity wines with really good structure and great acidity. And so, of course, sparkling is in that wheelhouse.
Yes. If I'm gonna be honest with you, I probably already told you this. Your sparkling rosé was the top of that tasting for me. I think it was absolutely brilliant, and maybe partly because of the label as well. But
No,
that was I looked at it and I just like, okay, that's it. I have to taste that, and it was what I wanted. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I've received, it's my first vintage of it. I've received a wonderful comments. Thank you for that. And even in that process of making that wine, I resisted leaving it on the leaves for a long time. I think I maybe shared did 30 days, because I wanted to make sure that the fruit spoke first, but then getting a little bit of layer of the creaminess from the leaves as a secondary. And that's really, I don't, even with my Cab Franc, just in older oak for 8 months, because again, I just want that, the tannin, the leaves, anything like that to play second in adding texture, and just that fruit component is what I'm passionate about.
Oh, wow, that was a brilliant wine. And then I think that's somebody else talking in the background. It's a
Can you
Great
hear
Dane.
me? I'm sorry, she's
No,
upstairs.
it's fine. It's quite, he's not a small dog to not to
No,
hear. Yes.
I think she's up to 100 pounds now, and she's 9 months old. So
Oh wow. Yeah. Okay.
we'll see her if we can get her in the camera. We'll see if she comes down. So
That's good. Well, Andrea, thank you very much for this chat, and
yeah,
I hope Canadian wine will keep thriving.
yeah.
And I'm looking forward to taste Dornfelder ice wine.
Oh yes, that's right. You heard it here
That's
first.
so that's when can we expect that, next year or the year
No
after?
master plan. Probably 2 years, I would say.
2 years,
Yeah, I've
yeah.
got a couple other projects. Well, the sparkling ice wine, of course, just launched, so I'm looking at making that again. I was really excited. I had there's a sturgeon farm in New Brunswick. He's been farming and fishing wild sturgeon for 20 years, and he has a new tasting room with caviar pairings, and so he has paired my sparkling ice wine with a caviar dessert.
I saw that on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
So I'll be continuing to, I have to schedule in, but don't worry, it's all up here. It'll be coming one day.
Good, good. Well, that's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Really
And yeah, it was a great chat. And go Domfelder. That's all I can say. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Andrea.
Okay, Millie says goodbye too.
Yeah, you have to send a picture of her, and then I'll put it in here.
Oh, that's fabulous. Okay, I'll do that. That's awesome. Okay.
All right. Well, guys, thank you very much for watching, for listening, and try Domfelder. And that was the last time I said Domfelder. Actually, this was the last time. Anyway.
Are you
All
sure?
right.
You can't let it go now.
Yes.
My master plan is working.
Yeah, that's it. Brilliant. All
Thanks.
right. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.